So verse 20 and 21, Christ will be honored in my body, whether by life or by death. For to me to live is Christ and to die is gain. I'm going to break this down because this is a little confusing, right? There's a lot of nuance and meaning to this. So, what is another way we can say this? Well, another way we can say this is this. Verse 20. Christ will be glorified in my body, in life or death. In verse 21, because, do you see the word because? Do you see the word for in the first one? Because I believe to live is Christ. To live is to feel alive in the joy of Christ. And to die is gain. To die means I receive the full presence of Christ. So this breaks us down even further. Let me put it a different way. Let's flip the verses. Put 21 on top, put 20 below it, and read it that way. Verse 21, if I feel alive in the joy of Christ and believe dying is better because I get Christ, then, verse 20, then Christ will be glorified in my living or dying. You see how I made that jump from the very first version, verse 20 and 21 on top, to the third version? The key is the word for, right? That links these two sentences together, right? If you look at the first one, Christ will be honored in my body, whether by life or death. For, in another way, say, because to me to live is Christ and to die is gain. Now let's jump back to the third version of how I'm trying to break this down for you. We'll flip it to help you understand what Paul's trying to say. What he's trying to say is saying, hey, if I feel alive in the joy of Christ, if I believe dying is better because I get Christ, then Christ will be glorified in my living and in my dying. John Piper puts it this way: God is most glorified in us when we are most satisfied in him. This is really meaty. This is really hard to grasp and difficult to understand. But once you get it, and I urge you to fight through the temptation to just gloss over this verse and to just throw it away because you don't understand it, but to really sit in this and allow it to change you. God is most glorified in us when we are most satisfied in him, which is the conclusion from breaking down verse 20 and 21. What God wants and what I want end up to be the same thing. I want to be happy. And when I'm happy in God, God gets the glory. So let me give you an illustration. This is an illustration John Piper uses. Some of you guys might know these types of flowers. This flower is spelled P-E-O-N-I-E-S. P-E-O-N-I-E-S. And I remember asking my wife, I was like, hey, what's your favorite kind of flower? And I showed her a calendar full of flowers, and she circled this one. So I called the flower shop and I said, hey, I would like a dozen ponies. They were like, excuse me, sir, we are a flower shop. We don't sell horses here. Like, wait, you're flowers? Yeah, exactly. I want a dozen ponies. Sir, we're a flower shop. Do you mean peonies? I'm like, yes. What? Okay, I guess that's what they're called. So got a dozen peonies. Now I want you to picture with me if I got these dozen peonies, or I call them ponies still, got a dozen peonies, and I showed up at the door and knocked on the door. Babe opens the door and I said, here, these are for you. And I hand her a dozen peonies. And she says, oh, these are so beautiful, Lito. Why did you? And I said, because it's my duty. Would she be honored? Would she be honored by me having obligation to give her flowers? Now, let's take scene 2, or try that again, but this time I knock on the door and she says, I give her the dozen peonies and she says, oh, Lita, these are so sweet. Why did you? And I say, because you make me happy. because I love you, and nothing makes me more happy than loving you and giving you flowers. These dozen ponies at the flower shop was confused how they're really called, but nothing makes me happier than to give you these flowers because I love you and you make me happy. In that exchange, my wife is honored. My joy in her presence honors her because it's not duty, it's not obligation, but it's something that gives me happiness, gives me joy to be with her. And it gives her honor because I'm happy in giving her the flowers. And so it is with God. If we show up to church on a Sunday and God says, "Why are you here?" And we say, "Well, because I have to be here, because I was dragged here by my wife, because it's Sunday and Sunday is what I always do. I show up to church. Oh, it's because, I don't know, obligation." Then we're missing the point of Christianity. The most important answer, if God asks us, "Why are you here this morning?" The most important answer is because being with you makes me happy, God. You make my heart glad. You make me sing with joy when I'm in your presence. We get the pleasure, God gets the praise. As John Piper says, there is no conflict between your greatest exhilaration and God's greatest glorification.